You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with the possibility of a blockbuster trade seemingly becoming more likely. According to Michael, Sean Duggar, Mike Sando, and Jason Jenks of The Athletic, Russell Wilson's camp has talked to the Seahawks about potential trade destinations. And that article even mentions 4 specific teams. There could be more, but these are the 4 that we know about now. The Dolphins, the Raiders, the Saints, and my beloved Jets. Adam Schefter of ESPN then offered a different list of teams. He included the Raiders and Saints, but he replaced the Dolphins and Jets with the Bears and Cowboys. Let me knock 2 of the teams out right now. The Raiders and Saints, I don't see happening. Is John Gruden in love with Derek Carr? Probably not. The guy's mentioned in trade rumors basically every year. But you can still be successful with Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a quarterback in the top half of the league. Not saying he's top 10, but he's definitely top 15. Easily. So if you already have Carr under contract, wouldn't you rather build around him than give up the enormous package that you need to get Wilson? I mean, I'll say this. If Carr is going the other way, if that's something the Seahawks are open to, that probably makes the Raiders favorites. Because what else are the Seahawks going to do at quarterback? Do you really see the Seahawks drafting a rookie quarterback and starting him on opening day like they did with Wilson? I don't see it. I think this is a Seahawks team that's built to win now. They've made the playoffs every year of Wilson's career except 2017. They have a roster that's capable of winning. They have a roster that's capable of winning the division. I don't care about the Rams. We have no idea what Stafford's going to do under Sean McVay. People are already locking up the NFC West for the Rams. It's ludicrous. We have no idea how the rest of the offseason's going to unfold. I mean, if the Seahawks go with a young quarterback, okay. The Seahawks are probably the Rams' biggest competition for the NFC West. Going with a young quarterback negates that. But as of this very moment, the Seahawks can win the NFC West. Trading Russell Wilson and getting Derek Carr back, granted, you're not in as good a position as you were, but you've still got a really good quarterback. Not great, not elite, but really, really good. But I still don't see it happening. I guess it's possible if Carr is going the other way, but I just don't see it. And the Saints, I definitely don't see. I think they want to roll with Hill and Winston. I think they're going to try to make that work. I do think Drew Brees is done. I've said that before. He has nothing left to prove. Let him start the countdown clock for him to get into Canton. I really think they're going to try to make Hill and Winston work. Now, is Russell Wilson a better option? No question. But I really think the Saints believe that Taysom Hill can be a really good quarterback in this league. And Jameis Winston can too. I mean, I'll tell you, I really think the Saints are going to try something that's never been done before. They're going to have, in essence, a 2-quarterback setup. The old saying, when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. Look, if anyone can make that work, it's the Saints. Again, is trading for Russell Wilson better than rolling with 2 quarterbacks? The answer is yes. But I don't hate the idea of rolling with Jameis Winston if you really think you fixed him. He has talent. There's no question. If you fixed him, you've got your guy for the next 10 years. And then you have Taysom Hill as the spitball option. That can work. It can't work the other way, though, with Hill starting and Winston being the change of pace guy. I don't see that working. But Winston starting and Hill being the change of pace guy, yes, that could work. An obvious statement of the year coming up, you'll see Hill more with Winston than you did under Brees. Just wanted to get that out there, but it should be obvious. I really don't see the Raiders and Saints being likely. The Dolphins and Jets are. If the Dolphins are truly ready to pull the plug on Tua after 1 year, something that I think would be a terrible mistake, but something that does seem possible. Yeah, replace him with Russell Wilson. Now let me reiterate, I don't want the Dolphins to give up on Tua yet. I am not saying that as a Jets fan. I am saying that impartially. I do believe that it is in their best interest to give Tua another year. You've got to realize, this is the guy who the Dolphins told their fans to key in on ever since the 2019 offseason. The mantra was tank for Tua. To give up on him after 1 year, a year where he went 6-3, completed 64% of his passes, threw 11 touchdowns to just 5 interceptions, and ran for 3 more? That doesn't work for me. I understand why the Dolphins would be a little sour on Tua. They see the other top 6 quarterbacks, Burrow and Herbert, kicking ass and taking names. Tua didn't do that. Tua was safe with the football. He didn't take a lot of chances. It was very dink and dunky. But I don't think that's a Tua issue. I think that's a Chan Gailey issue. I've seen Gailey be hesitant to really unleash young quarterbacks. He's very safe with them. Now that he's no longer running the show, it's going to be George Godsey and Eric Studesville. Tua will be put in a better position. I'm not saying that I like the idea of there being two offensive coordinators. In fact, I kind of hate it, but that offense will unleash Tua more. Is it possible that they could move on from Tua? I guess the answer is yes. They're certainly not as in love with him as they once were. They've been linked to Wilson, they've been linked to Watson, they've been linked to a few quarterbacks. But I do believe it's in the Dolphins' best interests to stick with Tua. Give him a shot for one more year. If it doesn't work, okay. Back to the drawing board. But I'll say this right now. I'll take Tua on the Jets gladly. It's not going to happen. There's no way the Dolphins would trade Tua Tagovailoa within the division. But if I'm starting a team from scratch, I'd much rather have Tua than Darnold. Now that brings us to the Jets. The last team in the report. A team that's been so heavily linked to Deshaun Watson that no one really thought about it a lot. Wait a minute, could they trade for Wilson? Is that feasible? I mean, I'll say this. Joe Douglas and John Schneider have a relationship. Last year, Douglas traded Jamal Adams to the Seahawks. And nothing would make me happier than to see the Jets in a better position to win than Jamal Adams. You've got Adams constantly throwing shade at the Jets. Hey, look, I'm winning now. I'm in the playoffs now. If the Jets get Wilson, the Jets are in a better spot. I don't care what the Seahawks are doing at quarterback. If they take Darnold back, if they take Fields, if they take Wilson, they're not better off than the Jets if they get Russell Wilson. I mean, that is an added motivation here. Sticking it to Jamal Adams. You're going to talk crap about us? We're going to make sure that your team doesn't win anytime soon. Also, realize the package that the Jets can offer. They have 4 first-rounders in the next 2 years. You know where those extra first-rounders are coming from? Seattle! Don't you think the Seahawks would be motivated to get their picks back? If they're trading Russell Wilson, if they're really content to retool this roster, their first rounder next year becomes exponentially more valuable. I mean, let's think about it. Darnold, 2nd overall, and the Seahawks pick in 2022. In exchange, the Jets get Wilson. I don't think that's a terrible trade. It's not great. The Jets could be forced to kick in another pick. But I think you've got something there. If the Seahawks are open to trading Russell Wilson, which, again, I don't think is incredibly likely, but it's more possible now than it was a week ago. The Jets have an advantage that no other team has. They have the Seahawks pick next year. Their first this year isn't as valuable. It's 23rd overall. The Seahawks pick in 2022, if they trade Wilson, could be a top 5 or top 10 pick. Wouldn't you want that pick back if you're Schneider or Carroll, whoever? I will say this, though, just a couple things. It seems like the Jets want to go young at the quarterback position. Russell Wilson is 32. He's got, 5 good years left? Maybe a little more? Meanwhile, you take a look at a guy like Deshaun Watson, he's probably got a dozen more good years left. There was a report that came out 3 days ago from Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network that the Jets are planning to complete their evaluations of the top quarterbacks in the draft before making any decisions on Darnold. That tells me that they don't want to go with an older quarterback. If the Seahawks and Texans both sent Joe Douglas an email saying that Watson and Wilson are available, the Jets would probably be more interested in Watson. I do think they want to stay young at the quarterback position. I don't begrudge them for that. Now, would I personally be interested in Russell Wilson? The answer is yes. If I can't get Deshaun Watson, if the price is just too high, the price for Wilson will probably be lower. And I will take that. I will seize upon that because I don't think Fields, Wilson, or Darnold are going to be as good as Russell Wilson. A lot of people talk about the ceilings that Fields, Wilson, and Darnold have. The list of quarterbacks to reach their ceilings is really, really low. Usually, you end up a couple notches below that. I mean, I'll tell you, if I'm starting a team from scratch and I have a choice, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, or Sam Darnold, I'm going with Russell Wilson. In fact, I'm probably going in that exact order. Russell Wilson, Fields, Zach Wilson, and Darnold. Because I'm done with Darnold. I don't want Darnold to start next year. People saying that he still has some potential left. It's been 3 years, alright? No, he doesn't. Sam Darnold is a bust. He's one of the biggest busts in recent NFL draft history. But now on to Schefter's 2 unique teams, the Bears and Cowboys. The Bears would make perfect sense. If Wilson wants to win, if he really doesn't think that he can win another Super Bowl in Seattle, and that's what this is about, not necessarily staying healthy, which is obviously important, but if it's more important to win, then yeah, go to the Bears. If you replace Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles with Russell Wilson, that team beats the Saints. I mean, I gotta tell you, I like Matt Nagy. I think Matt Nagy is a very good coach. If you pair him with Russell Wilson, and if you can convince Allen Robinson to come back, that's a scary offense. That's a really scary offense. We all know that the Bears have a good defense. Any defense that has Khalil Mack on it is going to be a force to be reckoned with. What's been holding them back is Mitchell Trubisky. I don't want to hear this notion that Mitchell Trubisky can be saved. He can't. Mitchell Trubisky is a game manager. That is all he is. Is there a role for him in the league? The answer is yes. He'll be a Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh McCown type. He'll last a long time because he's a competent quarterback, but you'll never be able to do much with him. The Bears need an upgrade. Their roster isn't getting any younger. Guys like Robinson, Mack, Danny Trevathan, Eddie Jackson, Akeem Hicks, etc., they're all in the primes of their career. They've got to win now. Trubisky isn't going to work for him. It has to be a guy like Wilson. Someone who's a notable step up from Trubisky. I don't care what the stats say. Mitchell Trubisky is just a game manager. He's a bust. It's going to go down in history as one of the worst decisions in the history of the draft. How did the Bears take Mitchell Trubisky over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson? They could have just stayed at 3 and taken either Mahomes or Watson, and they'd be set right now. Obvious statement of the year coming up. That's a huge black mark on Ryan Pace's resume. The Cowboys being on Schefter's list is interesting. As we all know, they've been in a contract dispute with Dak Prescott for a while. It seems like they're content to just franchise tag him until he caves. Well, what if he doesn't cave? What if you're tired of playing this game over and over again? Would it make sense for the Cowboys to get some cost certainty in Wilson? Can a super trade happen? We just saw one super trade. Stafford for Goff. Is another super trade in the offing? I don't see it. I really think the Cowboys want to make it work with Prescott. I think the only way the Cowboys would do it is if they didn't have to give up a lot in terms of draft capital. If I was Jerry Jones, I would attack it as this. You know what? I have a quarterback in Dak Prescott who isn't much worse than Russell Wilson. He is worse. But it's not a night and day difference. Am I interested in an upgrade? Yes, but I'm not going to mortgage my future for one. I mean, it goes back to the Derek Carr point a little bit. If the Seahawks want to keep a win-now approach, then Darnold doesn't fit that. Tua probably doesn't fit that. Prescott does. Is it conceivable? The answer is yes, just like it's conceivable that Wilson could go to the Raiders. But I really don't think it's in the cards. All in all, I think it's more likely than not that Russell Wilson stays with the Seahawks. I do think the Jets are in a good position to trade for him. they're in a better position than any team. The Dolphins, the Raiders, the Saints, the Bears, the Cowboys, whoever. But I don't think Russell Wilson is in the cards for the Jets. I do think Deshaun Watson is, and I still think there's an outside chance that the Jets could move up one spot. The Jets get Lawrence, the Jaguars get Justin Fields, Urban Meyer gets an OSU guy, and everyone's happy. I mean, that's the A1 scenario. It's not Watson, and it's not Wilson. It's somehow finding a way to get Trevor Lawrence. But I think the most likely thing for the Jets is somehow finding a way to trade for Deshaun Watson. I've said it before that I think Watson is destined to be a Jet. Moving on now to wide receivers. I'm going to stay there for a while. And I'll start with a report from Paul Denner Jr. of The Athletic, who says that there's just a 1% chance that A.J. Green will come back to the Bengals. Now, I gotta say, this is surprising because the Bengals historically have been extremely loyal to their guys. They kept Marvin Lewis for a long time. They kept Andy Dalton for a long time. Now it just seems like they're willing to let Green walk in free agency. That's very surprising. And I don't think it's the right decision for the Bengals. Look, I understand wanting to be young at wide receiver if you are young at quarterback. I get that. And if you've got a quarterback in the prime of their career, you want wide receivers in the prime of their careers. I get that. Green doesn't fit that age range. He's 32 years old. Burrow's 24. Tyler Boyd is 26 and T. Higgins is 22. I get that Green doesn't fit that age range, but Green is still solid. Last year he had 47 catches for 523 yards and 2 touchdowns. Is he the dominant force that he once was? The answer is no. But I gotta tell you, I like the idea of a guy like Green staying with Burrow. Mentoring Burrow. Realize, Green grew up with Andy Dalton. They went in the same draft. Laugh all you want about Andy Dalton, but he did make 3 Pro Bowls with the Bengals. He's had a solid career. Not a great career. Definitely not a great career, but a career that when he looks back on it 20 years from now, he'll have nothing to be embarrassed of. I think Green can help Burrow a lot. Think about this offense for a minute. Joe Burrow under center with Joe Mixon, Giovanni Bernard, T. Higgins and A.J. Green on the outside, and Tyler Boyd in the slot. If you can get a premier tight end, maybe a guy like Kyle Pitts, who Mel Kiper stupidly mocked to the Jets at 4. Not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but Kiper, in his mock draft today, mocked a trade where the Jets moved down 2 spots. I have no problem with that. But then they take Kyle Pitts. No. Just no. If that's what the Jets decide to do, they want to stick with Darnold and try to build around him, and Devontae Smith is unavailable, take Jamar Chase. Don't take Pitts. The Jets have Chris Herndon. I'm fine with giving Herndon another shot. But it's kind of funny. You know who picks 5th? The Bengals. Pitch would make sense for them. But the Jets? No way. It'd be Kyle Brady 2.0. If you put Pitts with that offense in Cincy, that's a scary offense. That's an offense that can be really good. All you need is to protect them and to put together a solid defense. But your offense is set. Moving on now to the Raiders cutting Tyrell Williams. And this is a good move for the Raiders. It makes perfect sense. Williams got hurt last year, didn't play in a single game. In 2019 for the Raiders, he had 42 catches for 651 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's a good wide receiver. You can do a lot worse than him. People forget this. His second season in the league, he had 1,059 receiving yards. Tyrell Williams is a really good wide receiver. The thing is, though, the Raiders are kind of set at wide receiver. You gotta think they're gonna try really hard to bring back Nelson Aguilar. If they can't, the franchise tag is a thing. They have Hunter Renfrow. They just drafted Henry Ruggs. Obviously, they have Darren Waller at tight end, but they have Bryan Edwards also at wide receiver. The Raiders are set when it comes to pass catchers. Even after this move, they're in cap hell. They're over $9 million above the cap. They've got some tough decisions to make, but Williams wasn't tough. It was an easy decision. It was a smart decision. Williams will land on his feet. He is talented. But he had no place on the Raiders. Moving on now to a report from Aaron Wilson of the Houston Chronicle that basically says that Will Fuller won't re-sign with the Texans. The franchise tag is still a possibility, but in terms of Fuller willingly putting pen to paper, that doesn't seem likely. The reality is Fuller and Deshaun Watson are very good friends. And we know that the Texans and Watson are headed for a divorce. As much as the Texans want to keep Watson, that's just not going to happen. The Rockets wanted to keep James Harden. He was traded to the Nets. Watson's going to be traded to a New York team too. I'm telling you, I really think Watson being a Jet is in the cards. But back to Fuller, that's a situation that does seem salvageable. Will Fuller be upset if the Texans trade Watson? No question. Everyone affiliated with the Texans will be upset that they traded Watson. But I don't think that's going to lead to a situation where Fuller holds out unless he gets a long-term deal. I just don't think Fuller has that leverage. Realize, he was hit with a PED suspension last year. He's going to miss the first game this coming season. Even though the Texans are stacked at wide receiver, Brandon Cooks, Fuller, Randall Cobb, Kiki Cutie, and Chad Hansen, they should still bring Fuller back. I don't mind them tagging him. I wouldn't even mind them giving him a big extension. I mean, I'll tell you, I wouldn't mind him on the Jets. The Jets need a wide receiver desperately. Bringing in Fuller would make a lot of sense. Last year he had 53 catches for 879 yards and 8 touchdowns. The guy's 26. He's a really good building block for a team. I like Fuller a lot. The Texans should try desperately to bring him back. Moving on now to the Broncos cutting Jarrell Casey. And this is a tough pill to swallow if you're a Broncos fan. I understand that Casey only played in 3 games last year, and this move saves the Broncos just under $12 million. But Casey's a really talented player. In 2019, for the Titans, he had a 74.6 overall grade, according to Pro Football Focus. And last year, again, only 3 games, I get that, but he showed no signs of slowing down. A 74.4 overall grade. Even though Casey's 31, he's still one of the best defensive ends in the league. And it's not like the Broncos really needed to cut him. Before this move, they had $31 million in cap room. Why wouldn't you keep Casey around? See if he can come back from the injury. And then you've got a wrecking ball on the defensive line. I don't like this move for the Broncos. And I gotta be honest with you, I'm not too optimistic about their future. Do we really think that Drew Lock can be the long-term answer for the Broncos? I don't know. I'm skeptical. I don't hate the idea of giving him another shot, but I'd be lying to you if I said I have a lot of confidence in Locke being the Broncos' franchise quarterback for the foreseeable future. I see some dark clouds on the horizon in Denver. Alright, now I'll give you some college basketball Valk talk. And I'll start with NC State upsetting Virginia. Now let me tell you, this game exposed a vulnerability that the Cavaliers have. They are a great defensive team. They've only given up 60.5 points per game this year. That's the 8th best mark in the nation. The thing is, though, when you look at points scored per game, they're not even averaging 70. They are vulnerable to just falling apart offensively. They need these 4 guys to be on their games at all times. Sam Hauser, Jay Huff, Trey Murphy, and Kihei Clark. Hauser and Huff were really good yesterday. Give them credit. Hauser had 21 points. He was the high man. And Huff had a double-double. 19 points, 11 rebounds. But Clark was only 2 for 7 from the field. And Murphy was 1 for 5 from the field and 0 for 4 from beyond the arc. You can have a great defense. That's fine. But you've still got to score to win. People say the best offense is a good defense. Nonsense. I'm not saying that defense-first teams can't win. The last March Madness title game we had was Virginia beating Texas Tech. But a team like Virginia that's so heavily reliant on their defense really can't afford an off night from two of their big four. Make no mistake about it, the Cavs are a vulnerable team in March. I'm not saying we're going to see another UMBC situation, but I'd be surprised if the Cavs really went on a huge run. As for the Wolfpack, this was a really impressive win. Not just because it was against a ranked Virginia team at Virginia, but because two of their best players were no-shows. Devon Daniels, their leading scorer, tore his ACL in late January, out for the rest of the year. And their second best scorer, Jericho Helms, only had 8 points and 8 rebounds. I give DJ Funderburk a lot of credit for stepping up. He had 14 points. Cam Hayes came out of nowhere to have 16 points. Off the bench, Shaquille Moore had 12 points. This was a really impressive win. I give them a ton of credit for being able to put their foot on the throat of the Cavs multiple times during this game. It seemed like UVA was going to come back. NC State didn't let them. There was a dagger 3 by Hayes with like 3.5 minutes left in the game. And the Wolfpack hit their big free throws that they needed to late in the game. Give them credit. This was a really impressive win. Moving on now to a game that I nailed. I picked Arkansas to beat Alabama, and I was right. What did I tell you about Moses Moody? That he was the best player in this game. What did he do? Showed why he was the best player in this game. He had 24 points. Did an excellent job of attacking the rim. Alabama sent him to the line 19 times. He hit 16 of his free throws. He looked like Trae Young out there. I mean, this was a close game for about 30 minutes. Then Alabama really tailed off late. Give the Razorbacks a ton of credit. This was a really good offensive effort for them. Justin Smith had a double-double, 11 points and 12 rebounds. Jalen Tate did a really good job of penetrating also. And off the bench, Jalen Williams and J.D. Note had great games. I mean, I told you to key in on Note. That didn't surprise me that he had 12 points. Williams did. I'm not going to lie to you. 13 points and 8 rebounds. He was really the X factor in this game for Arkansas. They're a sleeper team come March. It wouldn't surprise me if they won a few games. I don't see a lot of people picking them in their brackets when they're released next month. But they should, because the Razorbacks are a scary team. As for Alabama, this is a tough loss for them. Everyone affiliated with that program expected them to win, I know that. But I thought Arkansas would win. It's tough for me to really bang my fist on the table and say this was a terrible game for Alabama. I mean, Alabama did what you wanted them to do. Jordan Brunner had 14 points. John Petty had 12 points. off the bench. Javon Quinterly had 13 points. And I didn't hate the idea of sending Moody to the line a lot. Because Moody's not the greatest free throw shooter in the world. Yeah, this is an upsetting loss if you're a Crimson Tide fan. Yeah, this probably kills any chance they had of being a 1 seed unless they win the SEC tournament. But I wouldn't go crazy over it. Alabama's still a solid team with a great coach. They could go on a big run in March. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Alright, now it's time to preview Iowa, Michigan. The game of the week. Yes, this is a better game than Sunday's game, where Iowa will take on OSU. I'll say this, Iowa needs to win one of those games. If I'm going to confidently pick them in the big dance, I want to know that they can beat Michigan and or OSU with the entire college basketball world watching. I've spoken about both these teams before. I'm not going to go crazy in depth on the players. You know about Garza and Wieskamp. You know about Dickerson, Livers, and Wagner. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by talking about them. But what I will say is I'm really looking forward to seeing how the dynamic Garza fares against the old school center Hunter Dickinson. Dickinson will make Garza work. Make no mistake about it. I'll say this, I don't think Garza's going to get 20 points. I don't like this matchup for him. Dickinson is a really underrated player to me. He's underrated because he's an old school center. I like old school centers. I think there's still a place for them in today's game. I understand you need to stretch 4. I get that. But you don't need to stretch 5. There's still a place for guys like DeAndre Jordan and Rudy Gobert. I like Dickinson a lot. I'm really gonna be watching out for that matchup. Garza versus Dickinson. That's what you need to key in on. Which means that it's going to be up to Joe Wieskamp to step up. He's got to be the high man for the Hawkeyes. What I'd expect Fran McCaffrey to do is focus more on getting Garza involved from beyond the arc. Let's see how Dickinson does defending Garza from 3. That's going to be really interesting. Let's see Wieskamp drain a bunch of shots. Let's see Jordan Bohannon drain a bunch of shots. Let's see CJ Frederick drain some shots. There is a way for Iowa to win this game. I just don't see it happening, though. I think Michigan's defense is too good. If you can force Iowa into just shooting 3s, you've won that game if you're the Wolverines. Because you have a really good perimeter defense. Yes, Iowa is a great 3-point shooting team. Make no mistake about it. But if all you can do is shoot 3s, that plays right into Michigan's hands. Because they will be able to clamp down on that. If they don't have to worry about the interior, that's a dream scenario for a great defensive school like Michigan. One thing that we could see is some 5-out looks. You see a guy like Wieskamp, Bohannon, or Frederick with the ball. It opens up the interior. They drive past their defender. Maybe they draw a double and kick it out. Maybe they get to the free throw line. Or maybe they get the wide open layup. I want Iowa to live and die from beyond the arc. Because if they try to force feed Garza inside, they are destined to fail. Dickinson won't let Garza go off. If you attack the Wolverines from 3, you've got something. But I do think Michigan is the more well-rounded team. I trust guys like Eli Brooks and Mike Smith to go off more than I trust a guy like Connor McCaffrey to go off. It wouldn't stun me if Iowa won. I really like them. I think they're a dangerous team come March, but I think Michigan's going to win this game. Give me the Wolverines. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that Ronald Reagan once sat right where I usually sit. I didn't have the heart to tell him to move over, though.